Welcome, EverQuest 2 players. It's February 11th, 2011. It's time to gear up for the third EverQuest 2 Destiny of Velious live webcast. Today's topic, we're all about itemizations. We got a load of great questions from you, the community. I want to thank you again for all the great feedback dealing with items. And then also we're going to talk a little bit about beta and some of the exciting things that we have coming up for the launch of Destiny of Velious on February 22nd. With me today, three gentlemen who are no strangers to chainmail. I have Rich Waters, who is the Senior Creative Director for EverQuest 2. I've also got, back from the first show, Salim Grant, our Senior Designer. And then, of course, Dave Georgeson, our Executive Producer.
I got a promotion. Senior.
Senior Producer. Senior. Well, we can, maybe I know something you don't.
Hey!
So we're very, very close to the launch of Destiny of Velious, guys. Just more than a week out. We're so close. In fact, we've got showed up in the mail today here at the offices, hot off the press. The first run of boxes for the expansion that'll be hitting retail shelves here in the United States. So that was great, nice touch and feel. I think the artwork came out really, really great, as it often does. So. Big events, big happenings with beta this past week. We opened it up to a bunch more players, correct? And how have things been going from your perspectives?
Things are going really well. We're getting close to the beta now. We're going to be closing it down on Monday, end of day Monday. Lots of good feedback from players. Lots of things that we caught, that we polished, that we perfected, and we're really excited about it.
Plus, this surge we had a much higher concurrent rate of players, which was great for testing purposes.
So we're getting players in, fantastic. What about you, Salim? What have you been seeing? You've been seeing any player feedback that you found interesting?
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback about items, and it was very helpful. A lot of analysis from our high-end players really helped, so it's led to getting some tweaks in that we think will be really awesome. So yeah, it's been pretty fun.
What have you guys thinking? I mean, just in terms of how many expansions does this make for all you guys personally?
Well, let's see. This is 7 for the game. 7 for the game. I was here at launch, and this is my second one back. Done a handful on EverQuest 1 back in the day.
I'm the same. Expansions at EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2 in a good bit.
So you guys have pretty much seen it all. How is Velious stacking up compared to what you've experienced in prior expansions?
This one's really exciting. We got more people into beta than we had before. Got a chance to really polish this one more than we had. We got a nice long beta period this time. A ton of good feedback, like we'd said. We're really happy. The art came out wonderfully. We were able to do some new things with the dungeons that were pretty innovative. I think players here really enjoy. Couldn't be happier with this one.
You know, we've covered this before, but I think coming from your perspective, I mean, in your history with the game, I mean, just talking about going back to Velious, such a storied part of the original EverQuest, one of the most favorite parts of the original EverQuest from the player's perspective. I mean, what's that been like for you?
It's a lot to tackle. Players have a lot of expectations, for sure. People who enjoyed the first Velious and EverQuest 1, there's a lot of story to tell there. We had to split it into 2 parts. There was so much we wanted to cover, and it came out well. Really happy this time we're touching on the story of the Giants and the Coldane Dwarves, having some old favorites like Othmir coming back in. We had to save a big chunk of the story for the next one, but I think that's going to come off well too. We focused on the quality of this one. We made sure that the things we were doing right, and if that meant we couldn't fit everything in one box, that was all right.
The Othmir, it always strikes me as funny as somebody who's newer to the game than certainly than you guys. I mean, what is the fascination with an otter player race?
It's a good question.
Break oysters on your stomach.
That's a good question. We look at our race stats a lot for what people are playing, and people seem to want to play pretty people like elves, and then they want to play little furry people. And don't know why that is, but yeah, people are Ratongas, people want to be Othmirs, people want to be Catmen, but yeah, I don't know why people necessarily.
Well, we're at how many player races now, and counting, and we just added the vampire race back earlier this year, correct?
Yeah, I think the vampire was 20.
Fantastic. Well, So right to item questions, shall we? We've got a load of them. Again, thanks everyone in the community for submitting these through our forums, and I want to thank our fantastic community team who's behind the cameras operating the live webcast today for putting this together. But we'll jump right in. So, mirror related. So aside from that, another race that people have clamored for are the gnolls. In specific, the Icepaw gnolls. Will they either be a faction, a ladder added race, or will we at least get illusion with lots of animations added to it?
Yeah, so you'll see the Snowfang gnolls immediately as you get into Velious now. You'll start in an off-mirror camp, and then the first thing you'll run across after that is going to be Snowfang gnolls. There's some good story there. They've got some problems they'd like you to help them work out, and it wouldn't be something I'd be surprised to see an illusion for. We'll definitely have some stuff there for that.
Giving it some thought. See, that's what player feedback can do. So, bunch of item questions here, and we'll just roll through them as fast as we can. I mean, will we see the Nature's Defender in Velious as a heritage or a drop, as it was one of the more unique-looking weapons in Velious? So I think we're talking about the previous, EverQuest. This being in there. Are we looking to bring something like that back?
Yeah.
We weren't able to get it in for launch, but it is planned to be in post-launch. So yeah, it's one of the items that we definitely want to get in as a part of our post-launch content cycles related to Velious.
So I get the impression, like, did you guys look back? I mean, when we're talking about items for inspiration, did you look back to the original Velious content and then go and have that be the sort of what you were looking to put in for the expansion?
Yeah, absolutely. We brought key things like the Coldian Ring and 10th War. Those things are obviously just very key to original Velious. And part of the armor process and getting your armor involves getting certain gems and things like that are drops, and just this whole component ladder that you have to build. So we got a lot of inspiration from that type of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, we managed to get, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go.
We managed to get about half dozen heritage quests in now, which is older items that players would know from playing in the past. And they all have a hefty quest attached to them. They all give a great item reward, and it's nostalgic. And we've been alluding to some things that we'll be doing after launch. It's because we've been planning out the game updates for the year after Velious to make sure there's plenty of stuff to do Velious related. That you get the Velious expansion at launch, plenty to do there, lots of stuff. But more dungeons go in the first game update after that, raids being added throughout the year, and more heritage quests and other things too. So the Velious experience will keep going on after we launch the game.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff listed on the back of that box. That ain't all we're giving out.
There is. There's never a shortage of things to put on back in an expansion box.
Oh, yeah.
It's always, it's not a huge amount of area to cover either, so we're just selective. And be, they got, of course, have room for some awesome looking screenshots on there too, so can't be all words. Staying with the items theme, what changes can we expect going from Sentinel's Fate gear to Destiny of Velious gear?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that we've changed with the game, mechanics-wise. Like I said in the first podcast, we were evaluating items, and we wanted to make items a little more straightforward in their progression, but we also wanted to give players the ability to more customize the more special parts of items, which is procs, things like that. So we ended up taking our other color adornment slots, yellows, reds, moving them to other slots that normally don't have it. We introduced charms that have adornment slots now. So things are definitely different. A player will be able to easily recognize that this item is better than this one without having to do a bunch of crazy calculations, things like that. So on the high level, the game is way more straightforward, but for those people that really like to get into it, the number crunch, things like that, they have this little metagame they can play with up to 7 different adornments to mix and match different procs and things like that, that we brought from SF that we know that people really like, SF and other expansions. So our raiders, our top end players get that, this degree of customization that's really cool and hasn't been seen before. And it also lets the player retain, if this effect was really cool and something else drops that's better, but it doesn't have the same effect, you're just like, oh man, this model was much harder to fight, and he drops an upgrade obviously, but it doesn't have this effect. With what we're doing with the red adornment stuff, they're able to basically repurchase that adornment once they get it once as a drop, and just move it to the next item. So we think that's a really strong mechanic, and it also allows us from our side to have a level of control, because the number of procs on people is becoming a big problem performance-wise, and just it's hard to make items unique when every item has a proc on it. How do you make this item unique? You add another proc to it. Literally an item is better because its examine window is larger, and that's just not something we thought was good for the game. So we think that what we have now, while it's a lot different, it's going to end up in the end being much better, feeling a lot better, and being a lot more straightforward to our standard player base, while offering our more involved players a good degree of number crunching, things like that, min-maxing.
Yeah, the thing I like about it is the foundational stats you need, your strength and that sort of thing, come on the armor. That's a piece you build on after that, where you can take that thing, you see the helmet you got, it's got more strength, it's got more hit points that you want, you put that thing on, and then you can take the effects you want, resistances in some things, damage effects, things like that, and you can customize the pieces you got. So we've sort of got the foundation of the item you acquire, and then the piece you add in to make it what you want it to be. And yeah, it is different, like Salim said, but I think it's gonna prove to be pretty strong.
When you're starting work on an expansion like this and you're thinking about items, I mean, where does that process start? Is there we need to add this amount of content, for this set of character races, or what's the starting point?
It's kind of hard to answer. It really just depends on what it is. This being a high-level expansion, we had to sit down and, like I said, we had to evaluate what changes we wanted to make, whether they be item related or not. Regardless, any mechanics change that has to do with player stats is going to affect itemization to some extent. So we had to make those decisions first, and then from there we evaluate what kind of content we're going to have, how many dungeons we're going to have, and then build a distribution plan, what slot's going to drop here, how many are going to drop, things like that. And then on top of that, once you have that in stone, then you start working on the growth that you want to give players in the expansion, and then that can be broken down in various ways. But you have to track the stats, you have to see what stats are really important, what stats can be folded into other things if you want to do that. And then, this is where you start, this is where you end, this is projected where we want players to end, and that's it. From there on, you just start making stuff.
Yeah, there's a bunch of constraints we've had to work with also. When the game was built, that was a good long time ago. Lots of expansions now, lots of player power growth, and we've started running into some issues too, where now we can't give you more of this stat. This was a great stat, we liked it, you liked it as a player, you wanted more of it, and then you hit the cap. And if we gave you more, it wouldn't actually do more for you. Like, we gave out all the headroom we had. Hard thing to plan 5 years ago when the game was launching. But so we're obliged to work around that now somewhat also. Salim had said that procs had to come off to some degree. Those are effects that activate on the gear you're wearing. And there was getting to be at least one on every slot, starting to cause real performance issues, in addition to making the items feel a little more generic because everything had an effect on it. So that's something that's not always a thing the players will see, but it is true that the game systems have a limited amount of growth potential, and that's something we're working on. But then that causes some changes in how things work. We have to change the game mechanics, and people aren't always that receptive to wanting it to work different. You knew how health worked yesterday, you want it to work that way tomorrow. You don't want to have to relearn it. So it's a balancing act before we run out of headroom on something, or we have to force a rules change that people may not enjoy.
Of course, it's always a unique challenge working on a game like EverQuest 2. So rare in the industry to have a game that's lived this long and been this strong and has 7 expansion packs now. It speaks to the quality of the franchise. Fantastic. Talking about the progression of gear, what's the overall progression of gear? Sentinel's Fate Legendary, Sentinel's Fate Raid to DOV Raid, etc.
So we, as a part of the process that I described earlier, we also had to define where we wanted the players of various tiers from SF to enter the expansion. And I think players will find that, if you're a top-end raider from Sentinel's Fate, you're doing underfoot depths, things like that, you can pretty much just insert yourself directly into our easy mode raid content and start gearing up yourself that way. Optionally, you could do the group Kale stuff, which is just before, if you wanted to get some cool items there with the smaller group. But in general, they can start there, and it kind of pairs down, more casual, easy to hard mode raiders from Sentinel's Fate. They'll probably want to do Kale, but they could probably also step into easy mode and try it out. So it kind of goes back that far. An SF legendary group guy should be able to, start right from the beginning and get some good stuff. If he wants to venture into Tower Frozen Shadow or first main dungeon theme, instance themes, they should be able to go in there and have some fun. It's going to be challenging, obviously, but in general, we try to pair and recognize. We want groupers to get the full group experience, because group people aren't always necessarily raiders, right? So we want to make sure they get a chunk of content to play through and some good progression. Raid players the same way. They may or may not group, but in general, raid-wise, we want to make sure they had a nice block of progression. So we want to make sure they can insert themselves where they feel most comfortable.
Talking about gear mechanics, any large gear mechanic changes from the Sentinel's Fate gear? For example, Sentinel's Fate gear had an abundance of procs. Any changes to streamline procs, etc.? We touched on this a little bit, but if you would elaborate.
Yeah, it's like I said, we were noticing performance issues. Items were becoming relatively generic because the only way you can make them better is to literally add another proc. Or make a proc that was just so insane that it would never be replaced. So yeah, we definitely streamlined them, and just to give more detail, the way that they work is all effects or procs are linked to what's called an adornment. EverQuest players are familiar with what that is. The colors that we use are yellow for group and red for raiders, and these particular ones are in your three weapon slots, your 2 charm slots, and for raiders, easy mode raids will get belts that have a red slot and cloaks that have a red slot, and hard mode will get cloaks that have a red slot. So hard mode raiders can optionally add effects to 7 total slots, on top of having red slots from their raid gear or their armor, as well as yellow slots in hard mode, things like that. So basically, we have a set of procs that we brought from SF and other expansions that are more generic: damage procs, dot procs, specialty procs, more situational stuff like debuffs, things like that. And then on top of that, we have these things called war runes. War runes are raid-only dropped adornments that once they drop, whoever loots them clicks it, he gets flagged, so we can go to a war rune merchant and buy that adornment for raid shards and things like that. Once he gets basically a permanent access to that. And those war runes are the more special procs. The custom-made procs, a lot of those are procs that are upgraded from the Sentinel's Fate procs that players have, noted are their favorite procs, or the things that make them, this particular item, their favorite item. So it's a really cool mechanic. Like I said, it's just they'll be able to, I can take 7 war rune procs and put them in these 7 slots as I see fit. And the number that we have is upwards of 40-something different war runes alone. So it's a decent amount of just cool stuff you can add to your armor. You just got to earn and get the stuff that has those slots.
Well, we are rolling down on time, and we still have a few questions left. So we're gonna go through a few questions quickly, and then we'll recap. And talking about battleground armor, will there be new battleground armor from the get-go, or will this be released in the next game update?
That's the next game update for sure.
Yeah, next game update.
PvP stuff.
PvP stuff won't be at Velious launch. It'll be the next game update afterwards.
That's going to be a great game update, so we have more to look forward to. So at Fanfare, it's got a question from a Fanfare attendee. It was mentioned that you had future plans for critical chance. For critical chance, is it now useful or meaningful beyond 100%? Can you explain how this works? And is this only for offensive abilities, or also for healing spells?
So we have a new mechanic called Critical Avoidance, and this is NPC. It's on an NPC basis, and we did it for that particular reason, to make getting over 100% important. And Critical Avoidance is very straightforward. It's similar to our critical mitigation mechanic. NPCs have a percentage critical avoidance. That amount of critical avoidance is basically directly subtracted from your current crit stat, and that total determines how your chances of critting that particular mob. So if a mob has 50% crit avoidance, you're going to need to get 150% crit to crit him 100% of the time. And that's a steady progression, and it kind of is a helpful bar for those entering a dungeon or a particular new tier of content. Say, okay, my crit is not high enough to crit this guy 100% of the time, still can try it, but I understand that a reason that I might not be doing so well is because of that. And it does affect healers, it affects everyone, so it's kind of our answer to crit mitigation being a little bit more important to tanks and than other people. Now scouts and healers and mages, they have to pay attention to their crit stat on top of these things. It also makes crit buffs that were kind of phased out more important. It makes guaranteed crit abilities on a mob that you aren't guaranteed crit, makes those important again. So it kind of breathes new life into that particular stat.
Awesome question. So next question, are there any plans to uncap or alter other percentage-based abilities such as the AE auto attack during Destiny of Velious or later?
We recently uncapped multi-attack, which was huge, and we definitely are going to look into taking care of our cap situation. So things like attack speed and things like that, you may see us uncap, but those are all things we definitely have to sit down and discuss and see what the ramifications are for it.
So Dave, I got a couple of quick questions, and everyone, I got a couple of quick questions about flying mounts before we close. So what is the minimum level for flying mounts? Is there a similar quest in the lower tiers that can be done to get flying mounts? And can you hide the mount like other mounts can be? So three questions there. What's the level first?
You
of all?
nailed the level.
All right. So the initial flying mounts we're putting in are level 86. They're in the Velious Overlands, and that's the first way you'll be able to get flying mounts in the short term.
No, they won't be available at lower levels.
Fantastic.
And what was the other question?
Can you hide them?
No. Mostly because we don't want people running across the sky. So basically you can't hide your flying mount.
You will not get to be Superman looking in.
Well, if you looked like this, we'd probably be a lot better at liking it than this across the sky. So no, we're not doing that.
I think we have another MMO that can suit that need if you desire.
And one thing to point out about the level thing, the reason it's 86 because the quest requires level 86. It's not that the mount requires level 86.
And
Right.
can you PvP on flying mounts, or is it sort of a safe place to be sitting on your flying mount, watching fights going on and diving in only when you're ready?
Right. So if you were floating over a battlefield on your mount and someone could reach you, they could attack you. They won't knock you off, and you can sit there until either you die from them attacking you, or until you fly away, or until you attack back. If the guy on the flying mount doesn't attack, he isn't knocked off his flying mount. So it's semi-safe. If you're flying too high for anyone to reach you, then you're probably okay. But if they can shoot you with fireball and arrow, something like that, you might have a problem.
Fantastic. So before we end, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the Velious launch days celebration that we're going to have leading to the launch of Destiny of Velious on February 22nd. We've already announced that the first event, which is going to be that Tuesday, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday. We're going to have the off-mirror day, where it's off-mirror illusions. You're going to be able to look like the Otter player race and run around smashing things on your tummy, or
Yeah.
what have you guys got planned for that again?
Well, there's 4 different kinds of off-mirror, and there's, I don't know, I can't remember how many. Do you remember how many animations Tom looked up? It was like 30 or something like
several
that.
dozen. Yeah.
There was a whole bunch of emotes, and in fact, I believe he even got it working on the flying mounts too, didn't he? Yeah.
I think so.
So you can actually fly as an off-mirror.
Flying
But,
Otters,
yeah.
EverQuest 2. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, the events are going to actually kick off on President's Day. We're not going to announce the details yet, but you can tune in next Friday live webcast where we'll definitely be ready to talk about it. But we're going to have a nice event for you guys leading into the launch of Velious on President's Day weekend. And then So this is a super special announcement that we wanted to make for this webcast. We wanted to actually talk about the last day of the Velious launch events week that we have planned. So this will be the last special event on the calendar to celebrate the launch of Destiny of Velious. And so that's Tuesday, March 1st. What do we have planned, gentlemen?
Well, it basically came from a discussion of, so we launch, and then a week after that is when the launch days is over. And so the culmination of that, we wanted it to be cool. We wanted to do something special for it. And one of the things we realized was that the flying vehicles, well, because we essentially level locked it by requiring the quest for it, a lot of people weren't going to get to try that necessarily right away. So what we wanted to do was create an event by which almost anybody that wanted to fly could fly. So for that last day, we're going to do these aerial racetracks. We're going to have all kinds of, the gnomes have put together these experimental test pilot kind of tracks in Lava Storm, Tenebrous Tangle, and I believe Butcher Block. And we're going to have these aerial races, and you can get on them and grab the Tinkercraft that they've put together and run through the race against time. And there's all kinds of different obstacles and things that you can do. And then if you beat a certain threshold time, then when you come back, you get a title of test pilot, and you get to use the vehicle while you're in the zone. We'll give it to you as an award for later on when you unlock the flying mount. You can use this vehicle as an appearance mount. So it's really cool. Everybody can fly on that day. And then once we shut that down, we'll probably well, depending upon player reaction to it, if everybody likes it, we'll link it to Tinkerfest.
This is going to be great. I think the reaction is going to be awesome. And you're right. So if you haven't gotten up to that level 86 point where you're flying yet, this will be your first chance on March 1st. Gnomish Air Races and EverQuest 2. So you're going to definitely want to log in on that day. All right. So we're going to catch everybody back for one last webcast next Friday. I want to remind everyone that we're going into the last week where you can pre-order, and we do have that on the digital collector's edition. We do have that great special price offer that ends at launch day, so you definitely want to take advantage by visiting EverQuest2.com and pre-ordering yours. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you again for your questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.